Hello everyone, welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Happy New Year out there to everybody listening to Richest Men in Town. I know Mike and I are super excited about what 2021 has in store for us and all of the good things on the horizon. But we also are grateful at the end of the year and jumping into this new year about what we've experienced in 2020 and mostly what we've learned from our guests in 2020. So Mike's taking a little bit of time off, well-deserved, of course. And so what we've done is we've gone back and listened to episodes 16 through 31, tried to pluck out a few gems that we think are great lessons learned from our guests, and we hope you enjoy. So happy New Year. Enjoy the best of episodes 16 through 31 on the Richest Men in Town.
And some people say, oh, well, you just continue to like brainwash yourself, so that you can, so that you're not really free. And I was like, that's just so wrong. You are so free when you have eternal knowledge and light where you have access to it. That doesn't mean that you always have it. But when you have access to that, even for a moment, even if it's just one moment of clarity, the understanding that you have.
Point in time in this 10-year period at BYU, right? Were you married? How early on was that when you guys were married in that?
Within the first year.
Okay. And so at what point in time in that 10 years did you guys kind of come together and say, hey, we got to do something different?
Like around year 8.
Okay. And then let me ask you this: at what point in time in that 10 years did you have an understanding of, I feel like I'm depressed, or I'm experiencing depression on some level?
I think it was always kind of in the back of my mind, that I clearly was doing something wrong and that there was just something not working, but I think like around 8 years after being there, after being married and in Provo and stuff like that, my wife and I, we just kind of like, we started to butt heads, and we were having some troubles and stuff. And honestly, again, because of my wife, like you guys always talk about on your show, that how, there's inevitably someone behind you who's supporting you, right? When we started to have struggles with our relationship and how it was just, and I can't even blame her for how difficult things got with us over time, of basically just me screwing up over and over and over again with the school stuff. And so anyway, instead of walking away, I remember like one Sunday we had just like a real bad fight, and it got really bad, and it was Sunday. And instead of, separating or whatever, we literally went to church that day and met with the bishop that morning, like within minutes of this happening. Right. And the bishop was just like, you guys need to go to counseling. You need to work on your relationship. And so I took time out of school. I, stopped with the school stuff, and we just focused on our marriage and everything. And when we came out on the other side of that, after a few months of counseling and stuff, things were just so different for us. And I wish I could pinpoint like a specific thing that changed in me or that changed in my heart or whatever. We were talking about, maybe I was depressed, and I never went on like a medication or anything like that. Honestly, just the talking out our problems made such a big difference. And, when I went back to school, I basically had my act together, if that makes sense. So anyway, my point is that when we needed help the most, my wife made sure that we got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
close,
awesome.
Chad, how close were you to, I mean, I think marriage, like we were talking at the outset, Tyler, marriage is miraculous.
Yeah.
The family's ordained of God and that structure, but man, it can be difficult, and it's a fragile thing, right?
Yeah. We do our best to screw it up, right?
Right. But
Yeah.
how close were you, Chad, to, I mean, looking back now from a much better place?
Yeah.
How close
Yeah.
were you
I mean,
to
now
losing?
that we're so far separated from that, and looking back on it, I mean, like I said, if my wife hadn't been like, look, church is about to start in an hour, let's go. And let's not even go to church. Let's just go meet with the bishop right now, because he's there, you know?
Yeah, you talk about a hinge moment. There it is.
I guess that is a hinge moment for our relationship. That's a hinge moment.
Right.
I don't know I don't know why or how that changed so much. Because like my messing up in school and struggling with all of my personal stuff was not a result of our bad relationship per se,
Sure.
but as our relationship started to deteriorate or whatever, once we started working on that, yeah, I guess things really changed for me personally. The same way that they changed for Allison after our first kid, they changed for me after we got help on our relationship, I guess. But yeah, I guess that would be kind of the hinge moment. We would not be together if we didn't go to church that day.
That's so crazy. I love that story.
Usually I save this kind of question for something towards the end of the program, but we're just going to throw the script out, right? Like,
yeah,
you're in someone's ear right now, and someone is having that script run in their head, right? Man, I keep screwing up. When am I going to get this right? Man, I'm such a screw up, or this or that, and she's going to leave me. And like, what would you say to that guy?
I would say better times are coming for you. Do you guys remember this talk from Jeffrey R. Holland where he talks about his car breaking down and he talks about how he was driving back?
Yeah.
Dude, I have specific memories. I remember when I got rejections from these foreign medical schools, and supposedly, like, it's literally impossible to get rejected from some of these schools, because if you're willing to pay the money, they will take you, you know?
Right.
And even then they were just like, nah, man. And I remember being in a bathroom at the hospital, and like, I just thought to myself, like, dude, what am I doing to my family? You know, like, why am I putting them through this? Right. And I just remember thinking, like, after things started to turn around and I finally got like that acceptance letter to medical school. I know this always hinges on medical school and stuff, but you know, for anybody who's like, you know, once you finally get to that thing that you want, I wish that I could go and talk to that guy in the bathroom, you know, at that hospital, who thought that this is it, you know, like, you're done, and just say, like, just, you know, within a couple of years, you know, after 8 years of struggling, man, just a couple of years, everything was totally different. And I know that there's people like that, dude. I know that, like, there's people, not just for medicine and stuff. I talk to a lot of pre-meds who are in similar situations to me, and nobody has ever come across someone who had as bad of a record as I had. But, you know,
you hang your hat on that, man.
Failed. I talk to people who like got a C in organic chemistry, and they think that they're never going to be a doctor now. And but I always tell them, like, man, if I could go back and I could talk to myself that day in that bathroom at that hospital, I just wish I could tell myself that, you know, everything's going to be okay. It's going to work out. So if anybody's ever listening to this, you know, I know that I have a lot of friends that are going to end up listening to this and stuff. I would just say the same thing to you. Like, everything is going to be okay if you just keep pushing forward, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe you're not going to end up where you thought you were, or where you thought you would be, or whatever, but everything is going to be okay.
In that talk, Holland says, right, you keep going.
You keep going. That's right.
Yeah.
And he says, like, better times are ahead, or whatever. Absolutely. Right. So, yeah. I feel every time.
What do you think when you see your Vespa burned?
I was gutted. I love that thing. Despite Vespa in the UK climate is not quite as nice as Vespa in the US climate, I was gutted, and I honestly, there was definitely part of me that thought, I think we're doing something good on the kids holiday club thing, because that just seems so weird that would happen the night before we were about to launch this kids holiday club, and maybe that was reading a bit too much into it, but I just thought,
you just saw that as opposition to something true and good.
Yeah, definitely. And I was gutted, and then I was blown away, but I couldn't believe it when the church, like a week later, just got this huge check.
And you thought, try to lift that VW Golf onto a fire.
Yeah.
That ain't gonna work out. Get something with a little more weight on it.
Yeah.
But you know what I appreciate about that is your again, I'm not gonna call it spin, because I love that your thought was, we're probably onto something good here. I think that's, it's hard. Life is hard no matter what stage we're at, right? You talked about being young and a family in crisis. And again, we define that as just family, right? Because there's things always going on. You talked about your Vespa being thrown on top of the bonfire. You talked about as when you and Jules and the kids were in the UK, and you were having a hard time as a family. And I'm looking at all those things that you've talked about, Dave, and at the end of all of those, as you tell those stories, is my family was in crisis, and my parents were quick to show me love, right? They were quick to let me know that they loved me, even though, they had to give attention elsewhere at times, right? You talked about the Vespa being thrown on the fire, and you said, but I feel like we were onto something good, even though I was gutted personally, but I felt maybe that was opposition because we were on the right track. And then you talk about the crisis with your own family, having a little bit of a crisis, and then making this big decision to leave the UK and come to California and kind of start this new life, and the blessings that come from that. For Jules, having this scholarship and this opportunity with the church, and for you to be able to work with children, I feel like that's a huge lesson that I think people need to hear, because no matter what we do, we're going to get kicked in the shorts. No matter how good we live, no matter how nice we are, no matter how out of the way we go for other people, bad things are going to happen to us. And we have a choice of how we react to those things. And I just think that example is powerful. For me, it's a reminder that, hey, being able to look out the window and see the sunlight coming through the clouds, and rather than say, boy, it's going to pour rain on us, but say, man, there's that sun coming through the cloud sure looks pretty. There's a lot of power in that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, thanks, Tyler. I think there's I think there's often only one really good choice. No matter when you get hard things happen, it's like, well, this choice for me looks like a hard heart, so that's not a good choice. This choice for me looks like a soft heart, so that's the choice. And sometimes,
how about running everything through that filter?
Yeah.
Think about if you ran everything through the filter on what will that do to my heart?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that the thought that we even make decisions without our heart being involved is such a strange idea. The heart and mind are so interlinked. We reason based on what we really deeply choose, what we choose. When my second youngest was young, she would so often wake up in the night, and I would wake up and I'd have a choice. I can go and help. I can go and pick her up and be a great husband, or I can just I could go, I don't want to do that. And the minute I think I don't want to do that, I then have a rational argument, which is, why should I do it? Why doesn't Jules do it? I've got to work tomorrow. Who does she think I am? And I build this rational argument of kind of, she takes me for granted, but it all started with the choice. It all started with my heart posture. And so there's so often just one, for me, so often it's been like, there's one good choice, and here I am in California with the one good choice, living out my dreams, but it just actually just looked like a soft heart. I think You know, I think I love my kids to be full. I keep looking. Oh, you can't see me. You can't. I mean, I keep looking over there, my kids' bedroom when I'm talking about them. If you're wondering why I keep looking over there, but I think I'd love for them nothing more than to be able to be people of hope. You know, they'd be able to carry hope. And you think, how do you train a child to hope? And rationally, I'd sort of think, okay, what do you want? I go, a bike. Ta-da! Here's a bike. Okay, what else do you want? A pony. Ta-da! Here's a pony. What else do you want? And I'd teach them, whatever you hope for, you get. But the Bible says, you know, suffering, which is probably, I hope, for something that didn't happen. Suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, character hope. So that idea that something didn't happen, I have pain, I'm going to still choose hope, even though it doesn't look like I can see it. I'm going to still believe there is a way for it. And as I choose that hope, I have the courage to keep persevering and keep doing it. And as I keep doing it, I end up having this momentum of choice, which is character. And then I have hope. So when there's no reason to hope, I still am able to see hope, which is actually the way that God thinks. He doesn't lose hope because he's training us to think like him. So, yeah.
Probably the biggest, you know, not too long ago, I think I've probably gone through the biggest event that's humbled me in my lifetime, probably with work, you know. And it started back with, you know, again, Nick and I, you know, we were running this company together. We were COOs, co-COOs of this healthcare company. I think at the time the largest, you know, post-acute care company in California. You know, and you know 7,000 employees, 12,000 patients, and you know, I was like, you know, I'm awesome. You know, I'm like I'm writing large, and you know, there was a time where it became okay. You know, maybe it's time for me to kind of go do my own thing, and you know, through a series of events, I get to a place where I buy my own place. I join up with a friend that I grew up with that I absolutely loved. And anyways, we end up having a falling out that also led to my divorce, which led to me losing everything. I lost my company. I lost my family. I had to declare bankruptcy. I lost my house. I lost everything I had. And I got to a place where, and I fought this is like this year-long process of me just fighting. I had this mentality like I'm so awesome. I'm the best thing that's ever happened to this industry. Just as I'm like kind of circling the drain, not learning what I need to learn. And I finally got to a place where I realized the only choice I had was to call, you know, a family member, a brother-in-law who's running my brother's company. It's the same industry, you know, a guy whose boss I used to be. You know, I called him up and I sent him like, look, I don't have any other choice. I need my license for my administrator license had passed to the point where because I hadn't been running facilities, I've been running companies, so I didn't renew my license. And the only way I could get my license is if I started from the absolute beginning as an administrator in training. What I had started 20 years ago, so groveling. And he was nice enough to give me a job as an administrator in training. So here I am. Not only that, I had to go to the worst building in their entire company in one of the place in California. They couldn't convince anyone to go to. And I wake up one day and I'm like, I'm an administrator in training, and I used to be the COO of a company that rivaled this company, and here I am. I'm some guy's assistant a guy who I had hired and fired at one point, and now I'm there as his assistant. That was the absolute most humbling experience of my life, and it took me some time to kind of, you know, to kind of get to a place where I was okay with it. But when I've come out the other side, I said, look. Yeah, I think that the Lord knows who he wants me to be in this life. You know, I thought I was there. I thought I was walking the path. I was who I needed to be. But the Lord knows who he wants me to be. And he knows that I can't be the person he needs me to be. I can't learn the things I need to learn in this life if I don't have those experiences. And if I'm not completely and totally destroyed down to a place where, you know, I remember this one moment, okay? I remember this one moment where I'm sitting in this house. I can't have furniture. I don't have a job. I can't find it. No one wants to hire me because it had been a couple years since I was an actual COO, and it was too weird to hire me at an entry level position. I could not find a job. And I remember just, it was dark in my house and just laying. It was a point at where I gained a little bit of a testimony for Word of Wisdom, because man, if I had a vice in life, I would have gone to it. I wanted to drink. I never drank in my life. I needed something to take this pain away from me, right? I was in so much pain. And because I didn't have anything else I could reach for, I fell to my knees in prayer. I had nowhere else to go. I was destroyed. I was a destroyed man. I fell to my knees and I prayed and I asked the Lord to help. And I'll tell you, just like my dad, the anger, the bitterness that disappeared when I was in Barstow, everything disappeared for a moment. And I was filled with the Spirit. And I knew in that moment that the Lord was in control and that he hadn't forgotten me. He knew who I was. He knew I had an idea that where I was going to be in my life, and that wasn't necessarily where his idea. My path that I thought I was supposed to be on in life was not the path he was going to have me on in life. And that I just needed to have the faith. And that moment, I think it was probably a couple days later after that moment that I ended up calling my brother-in-law and just saying, I'm broken. I need help. I need a job. And I'll have to tell you, it went away for a moment, right? It wasn't like all my problems went away. I needed a 30-second period of time where I felt his help and his love, and I felt that Spirit, everything went away. And then after about 30 seconds, it kind of slowly came back on my shoulders, but to a point where I knew I could hold on to it, and I knew I could go forward. You know, and since then, I've never been in as deep or dark of a place I had been at that point. Since then, but I've had moments where I've been like, okay, I need some more of that, that energy. And I've gone back, and instantly, so quickly, the Lord's willing to come and to give you a little bit of reprieve, and then put that back on your shoulders. Let you breathe for a minute, put it back on your shoulders, and let you continue to get through the next day or weeks.
Well, Doug, speaking of advocacy and helping and seeing people for who they are, you've been really involved in the community up in Redding with the homeless community and helping that. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing with those that may be suffering and don't have homes?
Yeah. That was an opportunity I had over the last probably 5 years to be a part of the clinic where I work. Has an outreach that we go out and you basically take a backpack with medical stuff in it and a couple of nurses, and you go out into the homeless camps, and you always got to take sandwiches. That's what opens the door. That opens the door, right?
Yeah.
And water. And you go in, and everybody's kind of suspicious of you, like, what are you doing here? Because they're used to law enforcement coming and pushing them around. And, whether for right or wrong, that's a whole nother discussion for a day. But they're used to that. You really got to break that down, and they realize why you're there. I kind of fell into it and was invited to it. And before I knew it, I realized that I was talking to people about their lives, why they were out there. For 3 months, I asked every homeless person I met, I said, do you want to be out here? Or if we had a place for you to go, would you go? And every single person said, I would absolutely get out of here. This is horrible. It's dangerous. I don't want to be here. If I had a way to do it, I would do it. And it opened my eyes to, why most of the people are there, who they are, why they're there, and that, and I'm going to jump out a little bit. Sorry. We're getting going. If you live in an upper middle class white bubble and you don't have contacts with people who are really scraping by or are marginalized groups, or it's easy to stereotype. It's easy to, and I did. I lived most of my life driving over the Cypress Bridge thinking, okay, that's great. I'm on my way. And then I met Barbara, who was 72 years old, who lived under the Cypress Bridge and had been there for 20 years. And that's profound if you think about it. Going camping for a couple nights is horrible.
Thank you, Doug. Yes.
I mean, it's you're on the ground, you're on the rocks.
Spoken like a true scoutmaster.
This lady, you don't sleep, right?
Right.
This lady's telling me that she's been under there for 20 years, whether
Wow.
that's exactly right or not. But
Sure.
But she was really sick that day, and she had the flu, and her friends were all saying, you got to get her out of here. She's too old for this. She was in her early 70s, and she was a little turned around mentally because she was sick. So we put her in a motel, and with donations, we financed her to stay off the street. And she got some money every month, so we got her involved. So she would pay most of it, and we would help supplement it, so she'd have food money. She stayed in the motel for 1.5 years. She said she got in the shower and stayed in there for 2 hours first time.
Wow.
She took her dog, and they were in the Capri for 1.5 years. And I would talk to her, and I'd say, she'd say, I've learned some stuff. She says, I learned I need to pay my rent every month, and then it will work. And that's kind of, she said it.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her one day, I said, so Barbara, does your right hip or your left hip hurt? And she goes, oh, honey, I don't know what those are. She said, it's this one. And she pointed. And it hit me that, what's my responsibility as a disciple of Jesus Christ? What would he do? How did he go about doing good? Who did he go to? What were lepers in his day, and what are lepers in our day? And I know that when I'm doing that and I'm talking to somebody and just giving them some hope and helping them out, the Spirit is very, very, very strong. And it was just a life-changing experience for me. I did not think I would go there. I did not anticipate that in my life, but to see that, and I'm not sure why it has or why it's there, if it's preparation for something else or just to do this, but it truly is life-changing. And I worry a little bit that in our churches, we stay in kind of a pile. We're supposed to be yeast, right? But we're staying in a little pile in the corner of the loaf. And
Yeah.
And really, really, we should be, connecting with a lot of other people in our community.
But you mentioned faith, right? You mentioned your faith and your religion. Can you talk for a second about how that has shaped your life? Because it's been a journey for you, right? And so I'm just curious how that shaped your life as a young person, as an adult, and maybe how that impacts your family as well.
I'm the only member of my family. I converted when I was 14. Missionaries trekking knocked on the door, and they introduced me to the gospel. I came from my mom and dad separated early. My mom was a single mom. My dad, abusive man, drank a lot, drugs. I was introduced to alcohol and drugs very early in my life. Probably, I think 11. I was 11 years old the first time I was drinking with my dad. Got drunk on tequila. He introduced me to drugs very early. Introduced me to pornography very early. Violence very early. Just aggression. I just remember seeing some awful things that he did, and I, of course, was searching for some kind of comfort somewhere, and I didn't get it until I was 14, and I started realizing that, man, there's answers here. Right? There's an answer to my dilemma. How do I forgive my father? Right? How do I move on from this, and how do I not define who I am based on his treatment of me for so many years? Never got a birthday card, never got a, hey, Merry Christmas when I was living with my mom. None of that, you know what I mean? But then when I did talk to me, he'd tell me how much he loved me. It was so messed up, right? And for a kid, it just messes with your head. And I remember being in college in Louisiana. I was going to Lake Charles, Louisiana, McNeese State University in Lake Charles, which just got hit by that hurricane. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting in a one-bedroom, little small house, and I remember I was high on something. Look, you want to talk about being a plain speaker? I'm gonna be a plain speaker here and tell you that I had problems. I was sitting there and I'm doing some drugs. I don't know if it was, I don't know what it was, but I was inebriated, to say the least. And I was recalling this book that I had read, because even through all that, I've been just a prolific reader. Like I'm just love reading as much as I can get, as I can get my hands on. I was very disappointed that I hadn't read East of Eden until I heard you mention it on the show. I was like, what did I do? I should have done that earlier. But anyway.
Hold on, Keiffer. Yeah. Will you read East of Eden by John Steinbeck?
I'm almost done with it. I'm almost done with it.
All right, that's awesome.
I jumped on that bandwagon real quick. Like, I cannot be the only dude who has not read this book. So I made that adjustment.
Don't get me started on that book, though. Let's let you continue.
It's just segue. You mentioned 13. I think chapter 24, where they start talking about 24 was when they're talking about when he goes and talks to the elders about about Cain, and about Cain still having a choice to not sin anymore, right? And he went to the elders, and they changed the word from, so that was a pretty pivotal point in that book. But anyway, so if you haven't read The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, it's a short read. It's based on the book of Ecclesiastes. And it's broken up into chapters, sections, and each chapter says like on parents, on children, on love, and it's Khalil Gibran talking to you about those things. Well, in the section on parents, he said parents are the bows of the world, right? Like bows and arrows, and their children are arrows that they shoot into the world, and where the arrow lands, the parent can't be responsible for. And, when I read that passage sober, it didn't ring true to me at the time. And maybe I wasn't asking the right question, but I was sitting there, and all of a sudden it came to me. I was like, I can't blame my dad. I need to make it. I can't say that life is unfair because of the circumstances that were not my choice, because I can make a choice right now to be better and to do something different and not repeat the cycle of abject violence and alcoholism and anger and all those other things. And I did, and it took some time, but ultimately I left school because I'm like, well, this is a problem. Look at me. I barely stand up right now. I mean, because the environment that I chose to put myself in, the people I chose to surround myself with. I left. I dropped out of college, came back to Jacksonville, Florida, and I was like, I'm gonna join the service. I'm going to join the military, and I'm going to serve something bigger than myself. I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna get myself away from it. and I'm going to serve, and I'm going to have to answer to somebody else and be responsible to somebody else for my life.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 21. 21. So in between that, I was inactive, of course. Being the only member of my family, I didn't have the support. In fact, I had just massive pushback. They were not happy that I was pursuing membership in the church. They didn't tell me no, but they didn't make it easy on me either. And so eventually, when I ended up joining the Navy, I completely went active. I was overseas. I had no connection with the church until 2005. And let me backtrack. Just because I went inactive, I never went inactive in my testimony. That never stopped. Every time I made a wrong choice, every time I said something that was inappropriate, I felt the conviction of the Spirit every single time. And I don't understand why, brethren. I don't understand why the Spirit never left me, but it didn't. And my testimony never faltered. I didn't have the strength to live the gospel, but my testimony was rooted deeply.
And I will say, Keiffer, that comment that you make has been a bit of a recurring theme, wouldn't you say, Mike, with others, whether they're of our faith or not, that have been on the show, that have had struggles. They've all said there were times where I made terrible decisions, but I remember thinking, God, look away, because I don't want to do this, but you know what I mean? So I feel like that's a recurring theme. And I think that there's an important lesson to be learned there, because we do feel when we're in the middle of those situations where things are tough, we think I am totally unworthy of anything bigger than me to be involved in my life, right? Because I have made all of these terrible decisions. When the reality is, when we're in the middle of that terrible time where we've made these terrible decisions, our God, our Heavenly Father, is looking down saying, all right, Keiffer, here it is. Let's make it, right? This is our chance. And if that chance doesn't work out, guess what? He's at the next turn going, all right.
Quote said, "I am what I am today because of what my parents are every day." And I would see that all the time. And my dad, for him, it was a reminder of like, I need to be good for my parents. But it also like flipped for me. Like I realized, my parents have to be a certain way all day, every day. Right. For me to turn out how they want me to, and for my siblings to turn out how they want, they need to be on like every day. And so that was something that was really, really, really impactful. Something else I recently I've been studying a lot and thinking a lot about the word honor. Some of my friends go to a church that they have not a course, but they have like a marketplace course thing. And one of the things that they teach in there is to honor your leaders, or just honor.
Yeah.
And I've really respected it. I respected it like crazy, because every time anybody from their church gets up in front of our work, all of our work associates, they stop and they honor someone or honor something. And
love that.
I've been really impressed by it. And now they'll honor the least of us or the greatest of us. They'll honor technology. They'll honor just whatever it is. And that when we worship, I bring it back a lot to God. When we worship God, it's really, how do we honor him? We honor him in the way that we live, kind of like my parents are trying to live every day in a good way so that we can honor them.
That's a cool concept when you think about it, and really dedicating the time to do that honor. I was in a situation today where we were talking, and schools are kind of hard places right now, and kids are struggling. And the person that I was on the call with shared that in their county, they recently had 2 suicides.
Wow. And
it was a somber tone that just took over the breakout room via Zoom. And the person facilitating the discussion said, "Hey, can we just take 30 seconds and honor those two kids. It's powerful. It was only 30 seconds, but it was the mindfulness of being like, you know what, that news that you just told me, that's pretty tragic. Can I just process that? And can I take a little time to be silent and honor that? I love that. I love that concept. And I think that one thing that you can probably agree with in 2020 is there's not a lot of honoring going on.
Yeah, it's tough to come by, right?
Tough to come by.
Yeah.
So, Ashton, can you talk a little bit about your dad and your mom and sort of their influence on you and what their example was for you?
Yeah, totally. I consider them like two of the most Christ-like people that you'd ever meet. My dad is what I consider, he's the guy that should be on this podcast. My dad is the wealthiest person that I know. And it's not of gold and silver, but of love and relationships, and just people just love my dad. And it's because my dad loves them. He's all about making people feel important. And you know, as a kid, there's 8 kids in my family. I bet you could ask all 8 of us who was dad's favorite, and we would all say, oh, it was me for sure. I was the favorite.
I love that, man.
You know?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
How did he do that?
I don't know how he did that.
How did he do that?
I have no clue. But
Well,
we all feel that way. Go ahead.
but
Tyler.
you know what, Ashton, you said the other night, we had a pre-show call the other night, and you were talking about dating your daughters, right? And you said, hey, every Tuesday night, I go out with one of my daughters and we have a daddy-daughter date night. And I think was it you and Jane the other night in a tent?
Yeah,
or
yeah. Me and Jane.
Right, you and Jane in a tent in the front yard, right? And so I just, as you're talking about your dad saying, you know, you're saying, well, everybody thought I was dad's favorite. I'm just thinking, as you're saying that about you dating your daughters and what they would say right now, because I have a feeling they would say I'm dad's favorite. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. There's a possibility.
We'll have them on the podcast. We'll ask.
We'll get it.
But I think that's a big deal. You know, it's funny because years ago I was at a funeral for my dad's aunt, actually, but we always called her our aunt, right? And she was super fun. She would come into town when I was a kid, and she would just take the kids out individually, and she would take you out to dinner and to dessert, and just laugh, and it was just, you know, good times. Well, years later, I was at her funeral, and I was, you know, we were sitting listening to people talk about her. They had a group of people come up and just kind of share their memories. And someone said, I just remember thinking that I was Aunt Marge's favorite. And I remember thinking, like, what? Like, I was her favorite, man, you know? And I mean, what a powerful thing to have that much compassion and that much love to show that there's no one that feels like they're above the next person.
Yeah.
And that's
totally.
awesome, man.
I think it's
By the way, Aunt Marge has got to be the best aunt name ever.
I did, totally. She sounds like, I mean, yeah, look, I know. It's great.
Like Hollywood cast, right?
Absolutely, dude. She was amazing.
I think it's genuine connection. You know, now today in our day and age where we've got these cell phones and a lot of opportunities for distraction,
Yeah,
it can be difficult to make sure that we have genuine connection. Something my dad did, and I'm trying to kind of formulate this with my kids. I've kind of started doing it with Jane already because we had a funny experience on one of our dates. But my dad, I wrestled in high school and college. That also shaped me. But my dad we'd wake up, me and that other brother that were the middle brothers, we'd wake up at, I don't know, before any kids should wake up, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever, load up our cooler, the swinger my parents got from their wedding forever ago, and put food in it. And we would drive to a little tiny town in Kansas and go to a wrestling meet. And me and my brother, we'd fall asleep on the way there. We'd weigh in, we'd do this stuff, but it was an opportunity for my dad to have an individual interview with either me or my brother or both of us. And he would start out the conversation like this. He'd say, Ashton or Tyler, do you want to talk about wrestling or do you want to talk about girls? Really, it was just like, what do you want to talk about? What thing in life do you want to talk about? But we would usually start with wrestling or girls, and either was fine. My dad didn't, I mean, obviously he wants to make sure that his younger sons are doing good things and not bad things with girls or whatever. Right. But it was, sometimes I just be like, wrestling. So do you remember this match? We'd talk about it and go through it. And then sometimes it'd be girls, right? And we'd talk about it, or we would just go on to other things. And that was genuine connection. It was a question that I knew that Dad was interested in me. And it was a question that was a consistent question. He asked me today, he'll pick me up from the airport when I visit Utah for work or something like that. We'll be driving and he'll say, Ashton, you're gonna talk about wrestling or girls. And it opens up an opportunity for me to talk to him and him talk to me. And so two dates ago with Hallie, I asked her, like, let's talk about life. And we started talking about life. And she was telling me about her friends in school and things through Zoom. And then the next time I went on the date with Jane, I tried to do a similar experience. And I said, Jane, tell me about life. And she was like, stars. Because we're out on the trampoline. And I was like, no, tell me about life. Like, how's school going? And she was like, stars. No, tell me more. Moon. And I said, Jane, do you want to talk about life or do you want to talk about the galaxy? And she said, the galaxy. So I pulled out,
That's awesome, dude.
I pulled out an app on my phone that I have for the stars, and let's find Mars and let's find.
Fostering is not a quick process. So from there, we had court dates every couple weeks, different processes. Even though the mother had, in essence, given up her rights to it, it's a long, lengthy process, and it lasted almost 2 years. And with always the potential somewhere in there, it could be at 1 year, it could be at 18 months. Something could happen to where this child could leave your home. Oh, and that was always really, just really. The thought of that was always gut wrenching to go, we love her with all of our heart. But one court date or one family member all of a sudden at the right moment coming in saying, hey, we'll do it. They're pulled from it. Now, with all transparency, the foster system is meant to get the parents rehabbed in most situations, to get reunified their parents. Right. Yet, I mean, I can't deny that we went into it, any of our fostering, adopting, so with the intent to adopt any child we could. So it's a really nerve-wracking couple years to get to that point. But we got to adopt her, and a couple months later, we were able to seal her to us in the San Diego temple. So it was an amazing moment. Her name was Annabelle Marie from birth, and we kept it that. We liked the name Annabelle, so we just gave her Bella. And Marie is a name that my wife is really close to. It was someone in her family she just has passed on that she feels really super spiritually connected to. And so it was really perfect for her to have this child with the name Marie. Like, it really spiritually was positive and struck a chord with my wife. 6 months later, we get a call. We got a 2-year-old boy. We pick him up. He is just red from what ended up being super bad eczema, not just malnourished, not taken care of. He was living with like an aunt or a cousin. We take him in, and within a month of just good eating, honestly, and good hygiene, it was cleared up. In his process, his name wasn't James then, but we changed it to James David. James is my father-in-law, and obviously David for me. Now they're 2 years, and we adopted James 2 years later.
Again, with the same process, the same uncertainty.
Yep, the whole time. So we got Annabelle, then 6 months later we got James. So we're technically fostering 2 kids with the potential of both kids at any time being taken from us. Well, to add to it, we got a phone call again about 2 months later for a child who was 6 weeks preemie. Again, siblings are in the system. Don't think that they're going to get reunified with the parents. Do you want to take her? We went to the hospital. She was coming out of the NICU for the last couple days. This time it was my turn. I did the cutting. I did the feeding, and so we got to take home Jasmine from the hospital. So we got 3 kids in about a 7 or 8 month span, all foster, all with all the love we could provide them and give them. And yet again, the ability that they could be taken from us. However, Jasmine's proceeds over time is just as the same, and we're able to adopt her. So at the end of it, it was an amazing experience to have these 3 kids, and really unheard of to go of any foster situation where you get 3 children, and really with even in your preferred time frame or age of like 2-ish and under, and to be able to adopt them. Like we are the anomaly to the statistic. That is just not the norm. And Tyler and I have some other friends who on the San Diego area used to be in the ward, and some others who also got into fostering a little bit by seeing our experience, and they were not so, I guess you would say, fortunate with some of it. So we were still open. We took in a 4th child, and her name was Lily. And sweet girl, she was 11 months old, and we had her for a year, and we had the moment where we were kicked in the gut and our heart was ripped out. Again, great for her. She got reunified back with her family, sorta. But man, it was hard. And we still have, sorry guys, we still have a kind of a hole that was in our heart for her, and we miss her. And I mean, again, we're talking 4 or 5 years ago. As we were moving up to Portland, we chose to drive because we had to pull our camping trailer and they wouldn't transport it. And we spread it out over 2 or 3, and I lied, we spread it out over like 4 or 5 days just driving up the coast. We stayed our first night kind of in the Anaheim area. And when we left the next day, my wife got a phone call from a social worker, and it was Lily's social worker, and said that she's back in the system, and if we could had any interest. And we had to really weigh some things right there. Like same company, but we're literally on the move to Portland. This child is back available that we've loved, and it was really hard to say it's just not the right timing and right moment for us. And so to even think we had a chance to get her, and yet the moment just now wasn't working out and wasn't right. And there were some other dynamics to it where we actually felt she would end up being returned back again. Like, again, there's probably a deeper backstory to some of the social work aspect of it, but to kind of, I guess, to get our heart ripped out once, and then in a little bit again a second time of going, oh my gosh, if this call would have been 4 weeks ago, we'd be living in San Diego with Lily. We wouldn't have taken the job. I wouldn't have accepted the move. We still, of course, feel extremely blessed. Lily still has a picture and different things on our fridge, even though she's probably pushing 5 years old now. Like I said, she'll always kind of have a part of our heart and our family.
Success, right?
Superheroes,
yeah.
Superhero nurse.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you allow me just to tell a short story about prayer, yeah. I mean, talk about my wife modeling that. So, here I am struggling with that, that openness of praying for people. So one day I thought, well, I'm going to just go do this. I'm going to go around Redding, drive around. I'm going to go pray for people that I don't know. Right. So I'm driving around looking for people, the homeless, I'm going to pray for the homeless. I felt called to do that. And I'm scared.
Hold on. You've never done anything like this?
Nothing to this at all. I heard from the Lord. My wife's been showing me for years that she's willing to pray for people she doesn't even know.
Wow. That's like blowing up your comfort zone, John.
I drive into a bank. I find this homeless guy, right? I drive up to him. I'm still in my truck, right? He's on the passenger side outside. I roll my window down and I say, hey, can I pray for you, man? And I'm shaking, I got both hands on the wheel. The car is still in drive. My foot's on the accelerator. Okay. And the guy's like, yeah. And he's clearly broke. He's all, absolutely. He leans in to my window. I grab him with my right arm, right on his shoulder. I don't remember the prayer, but all I remember was as I was praying, the accelerator, well, actually it was in park. The accelerator just kept going a little bit more. It's just revving. By the time I was done with the prayer, this thing is going, I mean, it's roaring. The smoke's coming out of the tailpipe. I smoked this guy out, and here I am. This was my first attempt at prayer, and it's just kind of a little funny story of stepping out. And I just remember that. And it really kind of helped me do the next step after that. And it was amazing.
Hey, can we go? I don't think so. So Tyler, we're in this 30 plus episodes. I don't think we've ever gone to where I'm going to go. We've talked prayer before.
Okay.
Can we just have a candid conversation with how God answers prayers? Let's say somebody is listening to the show and they're like, what is this thing about prayer? Every time I pray, nothing seems to happen. Can we talk to that individual right now? And just Tyler, John, Mike, what does God's answers to prayers feel like?
Let me jump in on this one for a second, because Mike and I had an episode, 5 or 6 ago. We talked about forgiveness, right? We talked about the importance of forgiveness. And I'm sitting here tonight talking.
Still working on that, by the way.
As am I. It's a process, right?
Yeah, I need to talk to D.
Yeah, but here I am we're talking to John, and John's describing D about diving into the things that hurt and taking care of them. So you want to talk about how does God answer prayers? Mm-hmm. John Taylor talking about his wife D, to me, is an answer to a prayer.
Oh, there you go.
Right. Amen. So my experience has almost exclusively been when I'm looking for an answer, that answer comes through other people, right? Yeah. In some way, shape, or form. And think about the experience in the parking lot at the bank, right? Yeah. We've got this person who's sitting there broken, right? Probably is in a position that I would imagine I'm prayed out.
I'm prayed out.
I'm prayed out. And
I'm out of options. I've used all of my options.
Truck who says, "Can I pray for you?" Yeah. Like, to me, like I'm sort of blown away by that whole story. Because I think that if you're asking me how our prayers answered, that is how they're answered.
Oh, that's a great way of looking at it. That's a great way of looking at it. Amen to that. Yeah. Thank you.
You think about that guy, right? Because here's a guy, it's not like John Taylor does this for a living. He's driving around and he's doing this for the first time.
And then he blasts him with the smoke screen, and it's like the Holy Ghost is filling the whole place.
No. The second part of that story is after I'm feeling good about myself.
Yeah.
God's like, now get out of the truck and do it, and walk and find someone. And so guess who he chooses? He picks Charlie Manson. Okay, I mean, this guy was yelling, screaming, cussing, throwing things. I'm like, God, you want me to go up to him? You're going up to him. Dan Kozlowski. I journaled the whole thing. Dan Kozlowski. I hung out with the guy for a week. I hung out for a week. I went out there. I met him, and you know how I met him? How my approach to this guy? I'm like, walking out of my truck, I'm like, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do. This guy's screaming and yelling at people. Okay, I don't know how I'm going to talk to this guy. And I'm walking towards him. The only thing that came to my mind was Robin Williams. Robin Williams had just committed suicide. And for some reason, I used it. I walked up and I said, did you hear Robin Williams just committed suicide? And the guy went from yelling, he looked at me and he stopped and he said, "Are you kidding me?" And that was my end. That was my end, to hang out with Dan Kozlowski for a whole week. I hung out with him, with his friends, they were doing drugs on the grass. I was sitting there and I was meeting his friends, but they're like, "Who is this guy?" And I got to share, I was a school teacher, my faith, and it was like an incredible experience. And again, it's
but I'm a deep down, from the time I was a teenager, young kid, the things that I remember with my father, watching NASCAR, right, over on the weekends, drag racing. I mean, classic metal, and not the music either. Is just been, it just has always rolled through my blood, and cars have been a big part. And so the goals when I got married, started the family, was always to have a couple specific automobiles. And I had the opportunity over the last 6 years to do that. And the valiant part came when I
hold on, really quick. So you're like a car guy.
Yes.
So when your daughter calls up saying my car just died, you know what to do.
Yeah, she sends those to the mechanic because they have computers. We're talking cars that have, carburetors, but I guess they have EFI now, fuel injection, but they have a transmission, they have an engine block, and they, air, gas, fuel, and, and spark, and away we go. So yeah, we're talking the old school stuff, but
classic.
Yes. So I had the opportunity to purchase what I considered my dream car. It was a 63 Chevy Nova, Pro Street, tubbed. It was just, and I spent 2 years just building it the way I wanted it to.
Awesome.
Some of the things that were going on in the background that people don't know, and I did have to share this with my wife, was this car mentally consumed me. Mentally, it was like 90% of the thoughts that went through my day. If we were on vacation, right? I mean, I was thinking about what I would do next, right? If we were out to dinner, it was just like, man, I could do this, right? And I was still in tuned, right? The scriptures were still being read every day, prayer, magnifying the calling. It's just that this was an addiction, a mental addiction, and I didn't know how bad it was. So the Valiants came in. The church had introduced "Come Follow Me," right? And the very first topic was the New Testament. So it was November 2 years ago. I was doing a little pre-reading one Sunday evening, and it had to do with the rich young ruler, Luke chapter 18. And when I got to the very last verse, this impression came into my mind that I needed to sell my car. I closed my scriptures. I, told my wife, I looked at her and she goes, "What's wrong?" I said, I think I need to sell my car.
Okay, hold on, back up. For those that may be familiar, maybe not, rich young man comes to the Savior. He's been obedient his whole life, right? And he says, "What do I need to do?" I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Savior says, "Sell everything you got and come follow me." Right?
That's it.
Yes.
And he says, he doesn't say anything. I think he walks away.
Right.
We don't know, and the record's incomplete. We don't know if he does what the Savior asked him to do or not, but we know that was a hard thing for the Savior to ask that young man to do. Okay. And so you're reading that, you close the book, and you have a thought, you need to sell your car.
Yes. And so it was really tough because my wife goes, she didn't think that was necessary. She goes, "You're a good person. No, everything is in order. You've worked very hard. You know, this is what you deserve." But in my heart, right, without me having told her where my mental thoughts have been, and how much this thing consumed me. So I reached out to a couple acquaintances that I knew that, had expressed in the past that they liked the car, how it looked and all that stuff. So this one young man came over, looked it over, came back with his father, looked it over. He actually lost his car in the car fire. So, I mean, he had some money. And a couple weeks after that, he actually backed out of the deal, right? So I thought, okay, this was just a test, right? The Lord was just testing me to see if I would do this. And then I realized that I probably needed to take it one step further. So I was working out of town at the time. I actually posted it on Craigslist. I posted it on Facebook, and within 15 minutes, I took it off because I was scared. I was scared that somebody would actually buy it. So I realized that this was a lot harder. I went to bed that night, and the next morning when I was leaving my hotel room, because I was actually in Medford headed to Eugene, in my prayer, I told the Lord that if he needed truly for me to do this, that I didn't have the strength to do this on my own. That if he needed me to sell this car, that I needed him to just have somebody just reach out to me. And brethren, I'm not kidding you. I walked out of my hotel room. I got into my car. That ad was only on Facebook and Craigslist for 15 minutes. I started my car and my phone rang. Answered it, and it was a guy he was a firefighter. He was actually stationed in Florida, lived in Redding, saw the car, saw the ad, and said he wanted to come look at it. And I said, sure. He goes, well, I'm going to send my wife over and my best friend. They'll be there on Saturday. So I thought, okay, we're going to do this. So Saturday came around, they came over, they walked around the car, they looked at it, and the friend, his best friend goes, okay, I think he's going to buy this. And a little bit of history, I actually had built a brand new motor for the car, right? It was just pretty much everything that I wanted, and the motor had not been installed. It was just kind of sitting there in parts, just waiting to be assembled so I could put it in there. So this was a big thing for me. This motor, it really got me excited. So I told him I'd make him his best friend, I told him I'd make him a package deal. We'd do the car and the motor. And they left, and I'm not kidding. I shed a couple tears, right? This thing was going to happen.
Did the car have a name?
The license plate said Sinister One. So just by the way, I just sent you, Mike, I just sent you a picture of it on your phone. So
okay.
If you wanted to check it out. So yes, So, which is crazy, right? I don't have any tattoos, right? I'm far from being a sinister guy, but it just fit. So a week went by and I hadn't heard from this gentleman at all. And I thought, okay, we're in the clear. I've done my part, and he hadn't reached out to me. So I called, this was right coming into Thanksgiving. I called the guy who was going to assemble the engine. I sent him a text message and I said, listen, over Thanksgiving, let's put the motor together and we'll just put it in the car. And I'm not kidding you, about 5 minutes after I sent that text, this guy calls me. He said, hey, listen, I'm being transferred down to Corning. There's a fire down there. So I'm coming back to California, and I'm in Eugene, Oregon at this point in time. And he's still in Florida. He goes, I will be there tomorrow. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? And I'm all, man, I'm in Eugene. That's five and a half hours away. And I said, okay. I said, here's the deal. I said, I can meet you at 7 a.m. because I have to be back in Medford by 10 o'clock. And he goes, okay. So I hung up the phone and I was thinking to myself, we're going to see this through. He came over 7 o'clock the next day, walked around it, offered me a cash deal, more than what I was actually asking with the, combined with the motor. And I think that was a Thursday, and then he came and picked it up on Saturday. So
what did that do for Wes Franks? Shedding that car, what did it do?
Yeah. So the first thing that I noticed right away was my mind was clear, and it had not been clear in 2.5 years.
Wes, what was the car holding you back from?
Progression.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.